Welcome to the Rapid Reset Program Overview and Q&A with Eric Palmer. It's Thursday, July 16th, and we'll get started at the top of the hour. Just give folks a little more time here to join. Welcome. I see Clayton, and it looks like Monica's joining as well. Welcome to the Rapid Reset Program Overview with Eric Palmer. Just a little housekeeping for those of you who have joined early. We are going to be using the chat function to submit your questions throughout the presentation. And then we're also going to have a Q&A session at the end where we encourage you to actively engage and participate. You can raise your hand using the function in the Zoom interface, and we'll be engaging in a lot of Q&A toward the end. In the meantime, while we're waiting, if you'd like to share your company name, your location, and any questions that you have, you can do so in the chat. Just enter it in the chat, and so you're aware the chat will only come to me as the moderator. Okay, a few more of us joining. Welcome to the Rapid Reset Program Overview and Q&A with Eric Palmer. We'll get started at the top of the hour. Welcome. Welcome, Liliana. Thanks for joining. And Monica, thanks for joining. A few others joining. We'll get started at the top of the hour. You're joining the session on the Rapid Reset program. We'll be doing an overview of the program and Q&A with Eric Palmer. And just a couple housekeeping items. The chat is set to go only to me. I'm the moderator, Adam Boone. And you can use the chat to submit your questions throughout the program as we're going through the presentation. We will be having a Q&A session at the end, and we'll address your questions then. Or at that time, you'll also be able to raise your hand to ask a question live, and we'll have a good dialogue that way. And just a quick note for everybody, you will receive a follow-up email with the session recording and transcript, and then followed by a written Q&A, which we'll have out next week. While we're waiting, we'll get started in a minute or two here, but if you'd like to share your name, company, location, and any questions in the chat, we'd welcome that. Those will go only to me, Adam Boone, the moderator. We'll get started in a minute. Okay, a lot of people joining. Welcome, Isaac, Peter, Zach. A lot of people joining. We'll get started in 1 minute. Welcome everyone to the Rapid Reset Program Overview and Q&A with Eric Palmer. My name is Adam Boone. I'm an IntelliVen Senior Principal and will moderate today's session. Just a couple items for you all around the housekeeping here. We have the chat set to go only to me as the moderator, and we are encouraging you to use the chat to submit your questions throughout the presentation. And we'll be having a Q&A toward the end in which we'll be allowing you to enter the Q&A session live and ask your questions of Eric as we go through it. You also will be receiving a follow-up email with the session recording and transcript. We'll have that out this week, and then written Q&As out next week. So let's get started. Welcome to the Rapid Reset program. This is an IntelliVen sponsored event. And it is a game-changing experience for a CEO and his or her management team to work alongside an IntelliVen senior operating partner who will customize and use the proven MTL systems, methods, and tools for their specific situation. As we all know, we've seen a massive amount of disruption because of the pandemic, and the Rapid Reset program aims to get you back on track and figure out what's changed in your environment and how your business needs to change to address it. So as I mentioned, this is an IntelliVen program, and IntelliVen is a team of senior operating partners and principals who are independent of any financing organization. What we do is package and use what we have learned about running portfolio companies to help leaders, teams, and organizations to achieve maximum value in minimal time without drama. My name is Adam Boone, and I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm an IntelliVen senior principal, and I'm happy to introduce some other members of the team here. The founder and CEO of IntelliVen is Peter DiGiamarino, and our presenter today is Eric Palmer. Eric is an IntelliVen senior operating partner with a wealth of experience in professionally financed ventures. He has over 30 years of experience as a CEO, COO, and CFO. Eric's taken private companies public. He's taken public companies private. He's completed private and public debt transactions and executed over 50 mergers and acquisitions. He's sold several PE-backed entities to both strategic and financial buyers. And as you can see in his bio, he has extensive experience across multiple sectors. And I will personally attest to Eric's successful track record and the power of the Rapid Reset methodology. I worked with Eric on 2 successful turnaround and exit projects. One was for a company backed by Goldman Sachs, in which we conducted a major market pivot and orchestrated a successful acquisition. The other was for a firm backed by Sequoia Capital that likewise had a successful exit for a significant multiple. So I will attest that Eric is indeed a wizard at these types of strategic initiatives. So most relevant to today's discussion is his experience as a C-level operating executive. He's lived through and excelled really at coming out of multiple crises, including the 1995 recession, the 1997 Asian financial crisis, the dot-com meltdown and telco meltdown of 2000 and 2001, and the 2008 financial crisis, and many more that are specific to an individual company or an individual sector or market segment that was disrupted. Early in his career, he worked with venture capital-backed businesses, but he has worked exclusively in private equity finance businesses since about 2000. And his presentation today is tailored specifically for Carlyle portfolio companies and their deal teams. And it features his experience as COO, CFO for Carlyle portfolio company Gemcom from 2009 to 2012. So before we get started and hand over to Eric, I'd like to walk through the agenda, if I could. So after a couple more remarks, we will hand over to Eric, and he'll take us through about 20 to 25 minutes of the approaches to portfolio companies represented by this methodology, and really focusing on how you can rapidly reset in the wake of disruptive crises. Then we'll launch into the Q&A. As I mentioned at the outset, feel free to enter any questions you have in the chat function. Those will go only to me, and I'll see them, and what we'll do is work them into the Q&A discussion. We also have quite a number that were submitted in advance, so we'll be addressing those. And then we'll, of course, encourage you to engage live in the Q&A, and then we'll close and follow up. So before we get there, Eric has actually asked us to take a little poll, and I'll launch that poll for you in a second. What we're going to be looking to do is just say, hey, should I be here? kind of validate some of the impacts that we've seen in today's disruptive environment and ask you to please share which ones are applicable to you. This is totally anonymous. We will not see anything that you select. No one will see anything that you select, but we will be interested in seeing how the group has seen their business affected by the pandemic. So select the items below that you have experienced: revenue impacting situations, EBITDA impacting situations, stressed debt covenants, assailable competitors, loss of a key customer, potential disconnect between the private equity owner and management, unclear financial direction given the pandemic impact, is employee morale down, have you lost a key member of the management team, and is your situation keeping you up at night? So go ahead and select those that apply to you. Again, this is totally anonymous. We are not going to see who selects what. We're just looking to gauge what sort of impacts you've seen and how this has affected you. We'll let this go another moment here. Great. Okay, another couple seconds, and then we'll take a look at some of the impacts that we shared. Okay. Thanks for participating in that poll, everyone. And here are the results. So, okay, far and away, it looks like most of you selected that employee morale is down. Not a surprise, right? Things have been very disruptive. Workplace situations have changed. Not a surprise that we've experienced a lot of issues with employee morale. Unclear financial direction, yes, that also is to be expected with this kind of disruption to our markets that we've seen. And then revenue impacting situations also clearly a selection. Let's look at the other end. What sort of impacts are not being felt? Loss of key member of management team. So it looks like management teams are pretty stable among this group, and that's great. That's really good to see that that hasn't been an issue. Is your situation keeping you up at night? Well, good. It looks like most of us are able to sleep. So that's a plus, right? Okay, great. Let's move on then. And with that, Eric, please take it away.
Hey, thanks, Adam. And welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today. And I'm particularly excited to give this opportunity to have a discussion with the Carlyle portfolio company teams and deal teams. Our objective today is really to familiarize you with the Untitled Rapid Reset Program. This is the methodology we have been applying in financial disruptions such as those found in the poll we just concluded. Crises happen all the time. We're faced with financial disruptions all the time. The tragic loss of a member of the management team, loss of our largest customer, product recall, a financial crisis, and now we've got pandemics. I've actually lived through all of them. But no matter how bad the situation is, trust me, we should never waste a good crisis. The bigger the crises, the greater the opportunity to grow and grab market share from your competitors. So the Rapid Reset program consists of 3 stages: alignment, development of an execution roadmap, and a regimen designed to ensure effectiveness. In the first phase, we actually revalidate the company's goals and objectives, purpose and focus, and values. We also assess the assailability of your competitors. And then we rework the company's financial model to ensure alignment between the owners, management, and the employees. In the second stage, we support management in the development of an execution plan, and we identify what we must get done along with a prioritized roadmap of actions. In the final stage, we actually then assist management in the deployment of a very effective governance and incentive mechanism so that we get the results that we need. So throughout this discussion, I'm going to share with you real-life examples of how I've used the Rapid Reset program, many of which are based on my experience with a company called Gemcom. We thought you'd be particularly interested in Gemcom in this presentation because it was a Carlyle portfolio company. And because it played out 10 years ago, we can freely share the materials as they're no longer confidential. That said, what happened at Gemcom is today incredibly relevant. In 2009, end of 2009, I was brought into Gemcom by Carlyle as CFO and Chief Operating Officer. At the time, Peter D. Giammarino, the founder of Intellivan, and at that time, a CEO of a Carlyle portfolio company called Unison. Coincidentally, Carlyle just reacquired Unison. I think it was either last month or the beginning of this month. And Peter was introduced by Carlyle to Gemcom as our coach. So let me lay out the situation that Peter and I walked into at Gemcom. Revenue was down year over year, and the company had dealt with some really hard decisions, including a cost reduction program, which was used to maximize cash flow in order to cover debt covenants. Private equity financed, obviously had debt. At that stage, management was emotionally exhausted, and the PE partners were actually starting to question their investment. It was clear we needed to do something. So we rolled out a version of the Rapid Reset program. It was a slightly more advanced version of the programs that I had rolled out previously, the ones that I'd rolled out following the 95 crisis, the 97 Asian debt crisis, 2000, 2001. And because it was augmented by Intellivan tools and methods, and because we had Peter as a coach, we were able to formalize it and use it more effectively. We've now been working with Peter, and I've now been working on this for about 10 years, and it's even more sophisticated than the examples you'll actually see. All right, so recall that the first stage in the Rapid Reset program is to get alignment across the owners, debt holders, management, and employees. And the first step in this is to align on organization goals and objectives. Doing so after a massive disruption is a really delicate balancing act. There are two primary reasons. There are two primary reasons for this. The first is that shareholders and debt holders really don't want to change their financial objectives or the timeline they set at acquisition. However, due to the crisis, they actually do often understand that the situation's changed, and they might be amenable depending on the propositions made. The second reason is that management is often emotionally exhausted due to having lived through a series of really tough decisions, terminating employees, changing entitlements, firing customers, literally doing whatever it took to survive the crisis. Management and employees often have a crisis of confidence at this moment in time. And as such, they actually often don't believe that the plan that they had prior to the crisis is still achievable. In private equity-backed situations, also a third factor, and that's debt lenders, and debt lenders have financial covenants, which we also have to deal with. The alignment stage is that brokered discussion and negotiation between the owners and management. And the outcome of this is an agreed upon timeline to achieve specific financial results. And to do this, I find using the Intellivan change framework just an incredibly valuable tool in achieving this alignment. So let me take a minute and walk you through a change framework. First, we start with the current state. And in the current state, we like to look at the financials, people, process, systems, what's going on today. And then I actually like to look at the things I call change resistors. What's going to block us from change? Really understand what these are so that we can actually work through them. And then look at why do we need to change? What are the things that create change and are positive towards change? And then we move on to the target state. Working with the management company, we figure out what the future needs to look like for this organization. But the most important part of this whole chart is actually the stuff in the center. I call these imperatives. And these are what we agree as a group to do in order to achieve the target state. So let's look at a Gemcom example. So once again, we used the Intellivan change framework. We worked with management to create the current state. We looked at the barriers, we looked at the case for change, and we came up with an agreed upon target state. And in this particular case, working with Carlyle, we came up with a series of financial objectives. They're the ones in the center circled in red. Fascinatingly, extremely interestingly, the financial objectives did not change. We didn't change the financial objectives from the outcome of the acquisition. However, the objectives were actually strengthened. And this is because they were clearly discussed, documented, and fully agreed upon by management and Carlyle. And if you're in a portfolio company, many of you know that this doesn't always happen, right? Acquisition takes place. There's an investment thesis that's created. We don't always, as the company, we don't always get all the elements of the investment thesis. We have to kind of sort some of those out ourselves. So in this particular case, there was nothing hidden. We actually knew all the numbers. We knew what we'd agreed to, and we got complete alignment on them with our PE partner. The next step is to revalidate the company's purpose and focus. So crises are just an incredible opportunity to revalidate the driving forces that make a company truly successful. And so we work with the company to deeply inspect and get alignment on a series of really critical items that honestly make your company successful. So the first one is the mandate. And we confirm this, and this is how we tell the world how we define ourselves. The next thing we look at is, what does the company provide? What's the thing we get to market? We then really clarify who makes the buying decision, and then most importantly, and I can't say most importantly strongly enough, why does that buyer buy? We need to understand the emotional reasons why that buyer buys and the reasons behind those emotions, so that we know and really understand why they're buying the thing we deliver. This process, it collectively nails your company's value proposition. This actually really sounds deceivingly simple, but trust me, this is incredibly difficult, and I'll illustrate that with a Gemcom example. So this is the Gemcom purpose and focus slide. And believe it or not, creating a statement that summarizes the company's mandate, what, who, and why, that the CEO, the management team, and the board of directors all agree upon, is challenging and time consuming. It actually doesn't happen overnight. And trust me, the devil of this is all in the details. Unfortunately, those details are usually assumed by each individual party to be what that individual believes. And rarely does that person take the opportunity to confirm their beliefs with all the other stakeholders. So the key in this whole part of the analysis is to take what's inside each stakeholder's head, make it explicit, so the team together can come to a consolidated result. And the outcome of this is true understanding and true alignment amongst all the stakeholders. The next step we take is to ask, how do we actually use this whole situation to gain market share? This is, in this particular part of the analysis, is one of the reasons why we make sure we do the WWW. Precisely knowing why your customer buys really allows you to grow faster, and honestly, it allows you to grow much more profitably than your competitors. Too many management teams are just not aligned as to why their customer buys their product. Understanding your customers' buying needs, their buying patterns, understanding your competitors, exploiting their weaknesses, all in the wake of a crisis is a truly unique opportunity you really can't afford to miss. Never waste a good crisis. And also trust me again, your competitors are in worse shape and in more disarray than you could possibly imagine. This is the time to develop a plan where you can gain market share. The next step is we look at and we revalidate the company's values. I often get asked why we do this, and we do this because it's really, really important to the people in the business. We need to reemphasize the reasons why they are here and why they're passionate about your company and their mandate. If they're not passionate, we've got to make room in the business for people who are going to be passionate about that business. This is really important. Lastly, we refresh the company's financial model. We have to have a detailed model in order to get alignment between management, the board of directors, and the debt holders. And also, we actually really need this to measure our own progress. What gets measured happens. All right, so at this stage, we have complete alignment with the CEO, the management team, the owners, the debt holders, and all the employees of the portfolio company. We've also got alignment across the elements of goals and objectives, purpose and focus, competitiveness, values, and financial targets. So at this stage, we can actually, once we've got all this, at this stage, we can actually move to the next stage of the Rapid Reset program. And this is the stage where we develop an execution roadmap. Change is difficult. Most people avoid change at all costs. But if we explain what we're doing, why we are doing it, and we provide an execution map of how to achieve it, it actually doesn't feel like change. It feels like I'm kind of just doing my job. And then we have a higher likelihood of success in this whole program. To do this, once again, we like to go back to the change framework. This time it's a slightly different purpose. It's not to communicate with the board of directors, it's to communicate with the employees of the company. So here's the Gemcom execution plan imperatives. You see them there right in the center there in the 5 circles. And we needed to do 5 things that year. Gemcom had grown from 5 million to 60 million with mostly the same team. And we needed to evaluate who could grow to 150 million and who wasn't going to be able to make that cut. We actually had the market leading product. And we knew that with a few changes, we could actually have a killer product that would actually, grab incremental market share. Our customers were really frustrated. We weren't selling a solution. None of our customers or competitors were selling a solution. There was a real opportunity to provide something here that would also make a big impact in the market. There was also an opportunity to create a new market where we could be the market leader. We called it mine logistics, and it surprisingly just happened to fit our unique situation, our unique offering. And then lastly, we had the best sales team, we had the best marketing organization, and we actually had the most customers in the sector. So by augmenting our product portfolio with some particular niche acquisitions, we could offer some things that our competitors clearly couldn't. And by doing this, by doing these 5 imperatives, we could actually allow Gemcom to grow rapidly while leveraging our infrastructure, generating significant revenue increases, and generating significant incremental EBITDA. This next part's kind of fun. I'm going to show you, for each one of these imperatives, we actually created a set of what we call initiatives and actions that were executed. So let's see these. Let's see some of these. So this slide here actually has 2 of them on it. We're talking about the right people, and we're also talking about the development organization. As you can see in the left-hand side, we've actually got the 5 initiatives there. Underneath those initiatives sit a whole bunch of actions and activities. And then to the right of that, we've actually got a change framework. And the change framework is really designed to help educate the employees or the people involved in that particular project with the things that we had to achieve in order to get to the target state. It's really about communication. Similar sort of situation with the development organization. We had a series of initiatives that we identified to support that imperative. We created a change framework to communicate with the people involved and to use for wide and broad communication across the organization. This next one is the creation of a new market, mineral logistics. As you can see in that middle slide, there's 5 initiatives. In the bottom right-hand corner, we've actually created another change framework to educate our employees on what we're doing to get to the target state. In the next slide here, we've got the launching of a services organization. and a change framework wrapped around that. That's really to develop the solution. Once again, 5 initiatives, each initiative with a series of actions behind it, and once again, a change framework. All right, so once we've got our superordinate imperatives and a list of 3 to 5 initiatives to support each imperative and a set of actions needed, we actually then have to sit back and figure out how we're going to allocate our resources effectively. And to do this, we like to use a heat map. So we take each initiative and break out every component of that initiative into revenue generating activities, cost of goods sold related activities, OpEx related activities. And then we actually assess how much effort is going to be needed to execute that particular initiative and how much value it will produce. Then we take that and we snap it onto a grid. And what we can see on this particular grid is on the left side, we've actually got the ease of implementation, and across the x-axis, we've got the relative value of that particular project. This allows us to sit down with management and come up with a prioritized set of initiatives that creates a sequential plan that we can actually then deploy. Once we've got that sequential plan, we also sit down with management and we assign accountability for each and every activity across that whole plan. So once again, this sounds deceptively simple, but trust me, it is really difficult to get this done. So now we've got, now that we've got where we are, we actually move on to an execution roadmap. So we've done the, now that we've done the execution roadmap, we're ready to move on to executing. So how many companies do you guys think really do this well? In my experience, about 5% of companies get it right. That means 19 out of 20 companies fail to achieve the results that they need out of their execution plans. Our recommendation is to implement a governance system linked to a company's management reporting system. So this is a series of slides where we actually work with the the PMO and come up with a set of imperatives. We've already got those. We then heat map them. We create a charter that develops all the components of the overview, target outcomes. We lay out all the details needed. And then we look at a very detailed, move to the next slide. We come up with a very detailed reporting tracker that lays out all the components. We can then create a series of dashboards that let us know by imperative, by initiative, where we are, where we're supposed to be. And it also allows us to lay out a timeline of activities so we know when everything's taking place and we know when everything's supposed to be completed. So this next slide is a summary of the steps involved in an effective governance program, right? So we assign the PMO to manage the Rapid Reset program. The first component here is we really set up a regular meeting cadence. We make sure the executive leadership team meets. I like to meet every 2 weeks. We then put in place a set of tools that allow us to communicate across the whole company. And then we recommend transparency. We recommend that we educate the entire company on the whole program. And then a very important and often forgotten factor is to link compensation to execution. So I recommend linking successful delivery of the initiatives to the annual bonus payments for each and every one of the accountable parties. That is honestly the most important and least executed element in getting this whole effectiveness program working well. So at the end of the Rapid Reset program, we have all the stakeholders aligned. We have a prioritized execution plan, and we have a system to track and reward success. So who would like to hear how the Rapid Reset program actually played out at Gemcom. Remember, management, when we got there, management was exhausted. They'd saved this company from a traumatic event. We had to realign the private equity holders, Carlyle, and the debt holders with management. We actually did an amazing job getting company-wide buy-in with the executive and the employees, which did allow for a really, really aggressive change management program to be deployed. We built a really detailed execution roadmap. We utilized the heat maps to figure out what we needed. We had a prioritized ordering. And then we really did a good job of the governance and incentive mechanisms. We met regularly with the management team. We linked compensation to achievement. And so if we move to the next slide, we had sat down with Carlyle and we had agreement on a few things. So first of all, we agreed that over a 5-year period, we would grow revenues from 60 million to 150 million. We'd grow EBITDA from 15% to 35%. We'd pay off all of the debt that Carlyle had put on the balance sheet. We'd grow market share by 20%. That seemed unreasonable actually at the time. We agreed that we would ship an enterprise product to market, and then we would deploy a scalable organization. The Rapid Reset program had amazing outcomes at Gemcom. Not in 5 years, but in 2 years, we actually doubled revenue. So we got from 60 million to 120 million in 2 years. We grew EBITDA over that period from 15% to 42%. In 2 years, not 5 years, we paid off all of our debt. We literally crushed the competition. That 20%, we nailed it. We didn't think it was achievable, but we really did get there. Not only did we actually get the enterprise product to market, we actually wrapped a services solution around it and all of our other products, and we put together a very scalable business. The result of all of this was Gemcom received an unsolicited offer. That unsolicited offer led to a sale process, and coming out of that sale process, Gemcom was sold to a strategic buyer at an IRR of 33% and a money on invested capital of greater than 2.5 times. So let's reflect. And this is important. Only 2 years earlier, management did not believe that the original plan was achievable. Using the Rapid Reset program, not only was the original plan achievable, but we actually beat it. So I can attest to the Rapid Reset program. I've used it effectively. I've used it effectively in multiple companies. Each one has had a successful outcome. We can't guarantee your outcome, but we may very well increase your probability of success. And so I'd like to reiterate that, while the Rapid Reset program, it really does appear simple and straightforward, it's anything but simple and straightforward. Even seasoned executives and seasoned investors sometimes need an independent outside support mechanism following a crisis. They need this sometimes to facilitate clear thinking with a proven methodology, and that's what this program is all about. So if the poll that we ran at the beginning of this presentation applied to you in some form or fashion, that's a crisis. And please don't waste a good crisis. Intellivan is offering the Rapid Reset program to the Carlyle portfolio. And please feel free to contact me after the session if you want to explore the Rapid Reset program and whether it's right for you. There's really 2 ways to do this. You can either email me or via the Rapid Reset program landing page. You can submit a short form, and either myself or one of the other partners at Intellivan will get back to you within probably 48 hours or so. So thank you for your time, and I really enjoyed this. And I'm going to turn it over to Adam, our moderator, for the question and answer session.
Great, thanks, Eric. Very compelling stuff, and hopefully a lot of people are seeing that how this applies to the problems they're encountering in today's pandemic situation. As Eric said, you can get started by submitting an inquiry form at the link that I've just posted into the chat. Hopefully you all can see that, and feel free to click through there. You'll see that the page that form is on is, in fact, has more detail on the Rapid Reset program, the methodology that it's used, and types of areas of value it can bring to you. Also, you can send an email directly to Eric and offer any inquiries or questions you have about the program there. We do have quite a few questions that have been flowing in and that were submitted in advance, so we'll dive into those in a moment. But before we do that, just let me say that all registrants will receive a link to a recording of this session, and we'll also be following up with all of you with a written set of answers to the key questions that people have asked about the Rapid Reset program. Once again, we're going to start here with the questions. Feel free, if one occurs to you, to go ahead and place it into the chat, and we can work it into the flow here. We've got quite a few. So Eric, if you're ready, let's get started with the questions. First one's an easy one. What attracted you to join Gemcom?
Yeah, good question. That was about 10 years ago. We were in the middle of the Great Recession. I had the opportunity to meet the CEO of Gemcom, a guy named Rick Monyard. The guy was awesome, quality guy, incredible values, had a great vision for the company. I knew in that first meeting that this was a guy I could partner with, and that that I could work hand in glove with to make a difference. I think the second reason was, you may not all realize this, but there's a spectrum of private equity investors, and Carlyle was they're really on the right side of the spectrum. They were the team that we worked with. They wanted to make a difference. They knew how to add value, and I just really, really liked the team that we were working with. I think the third thing, and probably actually quite frankly the most important one, was this was a very complex problem to solve. Gemcom was a global company. The challenges were really, really big. The mental stimulation out of this, if it worked, was going to be extremely rewarding.
Okay, so really a couple questions then related to how you got started with figuring out the path forward. How did you figure out what to do once you joined Gemcom?
Yeah, okay, that's good. So I think I mentioned this earlier, but I had actually been through several crises. The 95 crises, the 97 Asian financial crisis, the 2000 dot-com bubble, followed hot on the heels by the 2001 telco meltdown. I'd also had a member of the management team of one of my companies pass away. I had a product recall. Literally, I'd lived through a lot of different crises in the past, and so I'd taken what I'd historically done and worked on mostly intuitively, and then Peter and I teamed up, and he developed a series of tools that formalized these things. And so what we were able to do is we could work through a system more efficiently and effectively to engage a large organization. And honestly, what you're seeing with Gemcom are early versions of this Rapid Reset program. We've been working on this for about 10 years following that. So we've actually gotten very sophisticated at this.
Okay, good. Looking at the methodology that you walked through in the specific example you gave of Gemcom, what was the biggest challenge to get alignment? A big part of what you talked about is getting alignment.
Yeah. So first of all, alignment is really the hardest, right? It is the biggest challenge. And Gemcom, as I mentioned, was a global company. We had offices in Canada, the US, Peru, Chile, England, Moscow, South Africa, India, Australia, Indonesia, and management was spread out across the globe. And so the biggest challenge was actually getting everyone together, sorting through all the languages and cultures, and pulling all that information out of everybody's head, because they already had their own preconceived notions of what the mandate was, who the customer was, and really sorting through that mandate in WWW was incredibly difficult. But I'll tell you, the CEO of the company and the board of directors were fully supportive of this investment. We had to meet several times, pull everybody together from the globe, gather all this information, distill it, really work through it. But the end result was really powerful. So we got alignment behind the plan. We got alignment behind it globally. And we actually worked with every single office across the globe, and we got buy-in from all of the employees across each one of those locations, which really, allowed us to reignite the plan.
Right. Okay. And digging a little deeper then, another question about alignment. How do you get debt holders aligned? Any particular insights you have around getting your debt holders aligned?
Yeah. So I'm not going to lie. Getting the debt holders aligned is probably the biggest challenge. It is really hard work. Debt holders are extremely risk adverse. They do not want to change. When they invested on a series of financial assumptions and metrics, and you've got EBITDA calculations. The trick here is you got to really sit down. You got to really nail your financial plan. Most importantly, you've got to get support from your private equity investor. In this particular, Carlyle has a great deal desk. They've got deep relationships with the debt team. We had to walk in with a very solid plan. We had to rework that plan. We had to let the debt holders ask a lot of questions. It was a lot of work. I've done it with Gemcom. I've done it since then with other debt holders. It's doable, but you need to have your T's crossed and your I's dotted when you walk into that discussion, and it's part of that whole relationship.
Interesting challenges. Yeah. So moving beyond alignment then, one person's commenting, there appears to be some strategic insights in terms of how to modify the product and focus on a new market. And I love this question. What tools do you use to discover those? You, as I mentioned at the outset, you and I work together on some resets and in particularly helping pivot product focus and pivot to new markets. So what tools do you use to discover those?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. There's a little bit of secret sauce here, right? So we showed you one slide of that competitive market analysis. There's probably 20 slides there, and there's, dozens and hundreds of hours that we work with the product management organization to really do a thorough market analysis. If you can really understand your competitors and what they're doing, what their products are, and then honestly, the other part of that secret sauce is the WWW. If you can really understand, what you're selling, who is the buyer, who's going to write that check, and then the essence is all in the why. And if you can understand the why, you can really figure out some deep insights around your product. You can provide marketing with a wealth of engagement, and then you give your selling organization the ability to really target and not waste their effort. We did use this at Gemcom. It gave us a deep insight into how to go to market. It really helped us figure out what products to acquire, and it really did launch us into that new mine logistics market. And it made a world of difference.
Excellent. Okay. So again, looking after the alignment as being the major first step, what challenges post-alignment do you see, and can you kind of walk through how you deal with those? Yeah.
So, we spend a lot of time talking about alignment and how challenging it is. But really, change is scary. Like, it is scary for people. People hate change. So we got to find a way to do it in a way that's not scary. And honestly, the way to do it is through this change framework, and then through this series of imperatives, initiatives, and actions. So the imperatives, they're a high-level statement. It's, what do you have to do to get to the target? And believe it or not, they don't actually take too long to craft. Once you've got the target state and you've done all this other work, these 3 to 5 things kind of jump off the page. The real work comes in figuring out what are the initiatives that actually make those imperatives real. This is where the creative juices really kick in. And there's usually a really long list of the things you got to do, the initiatives and the actions to actually get there. And then the prioritization is tricky, right? You got to actually figure out which ones we're going to do first. You then have to assign accountability. Setting up that timeline is really important because it actually gets to, hey, this is what I got to do. This is part of my job. And then linking that accountability to how I'm going to get paid is another secret sauce item, right? If you do that well, people are going to bust their butts to get that action done on time and accurately every time.
Great, great. Okay, just as a reminder to everyone, we are taking questions via the chat. Feel free to enter any question or comment or anything you'd like Eric to respond to in the chat. Those will only to me, and we will we'll work them into the discussion. So we have several questions flowing in here regarding HR related issues, Eric. So one question is, how does the RRP program impact morale? And as we saw during the poll, that a lot of people are worried about employee morale. And then if you could talk about the importance of culture as a key to a successful reset.
So Adam, these are great questions. So in the beginning, all over the map, it's all about people, right? These companies are all people-based companies. One of the keys is to align on values. If we can, and remember I said, people often ask me why you do values as part of this alignment. But if you can align on values, it gives people something to grab onto. It gives people something to rally behind. Just imagine you're in a company and you've had a 10 or 20% headcount reduction. Maybe your entitlements got reduced, right? Your 401k has been adjusted. People just, at that stage, people feel horrible. And management is exhausted. Trust, I was just on the phone last week with a CEO, a friend of mine. She'd just done a reduction. It's the second reduction she's had to do in the last, 12 months. She had to change entitlements. Staff have lost confidence in her plan, and she's exhausted. She's like, I've been running hard for 18 months. So what we really need to do then is we need to revalidate what brought those people into the company. They need a purpose, they need a focus, they need those values to resonate with them. And so I don't use the word culture, but quite frankly, that's what this is, right? Your values are the main driving force behind your culture. And I think what's fascinating about this particular program is it's modular. So it really plays into morale, right? So first you take the goals and objectives, you get them cleaned up, you organize them, you announce that, give it to the people, let the organization get behind those goals and objectives. And then you get the purpose and focus done. Once again, share it with people. People love to know the mandate, right? The mandate is a driving force for people. They really want to know the why. The competitive analysis, right? Hey, don't focus internally, focus on the enemy, right? That's really, really valuable. Once again, it's modular, right? We get to the values. Everyone has to ask why I'm here, right? If a person isn't asking why they're here, or they're not driving into that, or they don't have an affinity, right? It's time for that person to leave the organization so we can bring somebody in who actually really does buy into those values and wants to push forward. And then once you've got that aligned financial model, you can actually start to measure progress. And so once people are focused and they're focused again on growing the company, they're not worried about, they're not demotivated anymore, right? And so by the time you get to the imperatives and the initiatives, the employees are actually re-motivated, re-engaged, and they're really ready to go to battle for the company again. And I think lastly on this one, when the employees see management enthused and engaged, they see management with purpose and clarity, it really is contagious, and it starts to spread throughout the whole company. So, this alignment program, honestly, it's a real morale booster, and it really is the engine that drives the growth of the company.
Excellent. I'm sure that that's really resonated with a lot of our participants here today, because as we indicated in the poll, those human resources and culture and really employee morale issues are front and center for us, top of mind. So very interesting stuff there. Okay, going to change gears a little bit here because we've had a couple questions come in around the execution side of this, really what you're calling the imperatives. So I'm going to club these questions together into one, and hopefully we can address some of these points that people are asking about. First off, can you define the difference between an imperative, an initiative, and an action? That's the first part. And then the second part from a different questioner is, how do you manage underperformance or overperformance among various strategic initiatives? So really about the metrics and the measurement. How do you manage underperformance or overperformance?
Okay, cool. So yeah. Yeah, so imperative, I'll start with the imperative, initiative, and action. And sometimes I play a little fast and loose with these. I try to be very distinct, and sometimes I can understand why somebody would want to know the difference. Think of these as 3 levels, concatenated or nested levels. And each one of the 3 are something you need to do, but at a different level. So the imperative is an overarching thing that you have to get done. And it's things you get done to get you from the current state to the target state. Typically, they're cross-functional, and I normally recommend that you assign this to one of the C-level executives, the CEO, CFO, Chief Operating Officer, etc. An initiative is something needed to execute on an imperative. I like to limit it to 3 or 5 of these for every imperative, and then typically a manager in the company owns one of these. Each initiative itself will then have a series of actions that support it. Sometimes we've got like 1 action supporting an initiative. Sometimes we've got 20 actions supporting an initiative. And these are typically assigned to an individual employee. The net of all of this is, by having a really detailed list of activities allocated to individuals with a timeline and a prioritization and a roadmap associated with it, is it really does make it less scary. It doesn't feel like change. It takes that whole change thing out of the element. And it really, our objective here is to really make it feel like that person can say, I'm just doing my job. And Adam, remind me the second half of that question.
Yeah, sure. So related to really the governance then of these initiatives, how do you manage the underperformance or overperformance among various strategic initiatives?
Yeah, cool. That's great. I don't even remember that chart. We actually had a very detailed list of everything. So there's a PMO, a person in the program management office, who orchestrates all of this. And they make sure that everybody's updating where they are at all times. It's a very, very detailed, we use Excel template on this list. And then there's a series of dials. They look like horseshoes, and the horseshoe will actually have a line on it that says, as of today, you're supposed to be 32% complete. And the horseshoe will actually calculate, oh, you're actually at 35%, so you're in good shape. Or it'll say you're at 28% and you're below target. We then actually meet with management. I like to meet with management every 2 weeks and sit down and we review the dashboard. And in the dashboard, we don't necessarily review the green items, but we review the yellow and the red items. So what's at risk of falling behind or not getting executed, and what actually has fallen behind or not gotten executed. And then we assign an individual who owns the imperative or the initiative, depending on the situation, to actually engage with the team to get that project back online.
Great, great. Okay. We have far more questions here than we're going to be able to address in the time we have remaining, but let's see if we can slice off a couple more to discuss. So how many companies have you done this for, and what kind of companies have you done this for?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've done this for probably about 12 companies myself over time. The Intelligent team probably has done it for an additional 12 companies, so probably around 24 companies in total we've run this program through, maybe more actually. And the program itself is really designed for high growth companies. It's also designed for private equity backed companies, but we've worked with venture capped companies and we've worked with privately owned companies as well. I don't think we've worked with a public company with this particular program at this stage. It works extremely well for companies that can actually, grow quickly because they're in a really good market, or they've got a really good product, or they've got something special. And personally, I like to work in the private equity backed realm because I actually like to work with investment thesis. If I know the investment thesis and I know what we've got, we can actually meld the two together to come up with a program that we can actually execute within the investment thesis timeline.
Okay. So a kind of a related question then is, how long does the Rapid Reset program take?
Yeah, Rapid Reset program. So the Rapid Reset program, it's a partnership between a CEO and an intelligent operating partner. And we actually, because we've all been in companies, we actually understand the company has to run while the program is being formulated. That's one of the reasons why it's so modular. Each piece can be, and especially in the alignment stage, each piece can be identified, allocated, and then as soon as it's completed, it can actually be used throughout the company. So to really answer your question, depending on the size and the complexity, the Rapid Reset program usually takes somewhere between a month and a quarter. I would probably budget a full quarter for this. And then the governance program actually stays in place for a long period of time following. And quite often, the CEO asks us to stay in touch with and participate in the governance system and make sure that they're getting the most value out of the program that they can get.
Great. Okay. I think we may have one more question here. This has to do, again, with the activities and the strategic initiatives and really how you prioritize those. So how do we assess the amount of effort and the amount of value when prioritizing activities as part of the Rapid Reset?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm laughing at this because my background is finance, right? My heritage is a CFO. And so when I was a little bit younger, I used to make these really complicated, right? We'd assess down to the penny, how much value it created, and we'd figure out how many hours it took. As I've matured and gotten a little bit older, I actually recommend keeping it relatively simple. And I actually use kind of a 3-point scale for both effort and for value. On value, it's pretty simple, right? Is it a small amount of dollars, a medium amount of dollars, and a large amount of dollars that it will create? Is it a little bit of work, a decent amount of work, or is it actually a lot of work? And actually, believe it or not, when you actually put this together, it creates a relatively accurate assessment of which ones to do without having to get into spending hours and days running the numbers and running the analysis.
Great. I think that that brings us to the end of our time. I'm putting in the chat for everyone to see the link to go to the inquiry form. So once again, you can submit a form and engage in a discussion to see if this is a good fit for you. Eric, any last remarks for the group?
Well, I'd really like to say, if that poll in any way touched you, you're in a crisis, or you've actually emerged from a crisis, take the time, drop me an email, or load up your information on the landing page, and myself or one of the other Intelligent partners will get back to you within 24 or 48 hours.
Great. Thank you very much, Eric. And thank you all for attending the Rapid Reset Program Overview with Eric Palmer. And as I said, be watching for an email to come from us with the recording and the written Q&A responses from Eric. Thanks once again, and hope to hear from you all soon.
Thanks, Adam. You did a great job.
Thanks.